And so again, the not finding any point is the point. And in a lot of spiritual meditation, New Age circles, medicine circles, and many of us, we come across the idea of being centered, of finding our center, and finding our center of gravity, finding our inner center of stability. And just now we looked for the center of the mind. We couldn't find it because we couldn't find an edge. We looked for the center of the point of our awareness. We couldn't find it because we couldn't find an edge. We found that everything was arising inside of it. And there's a fascinating thing here, which I don't want to contradict other teachings or other practices of being centered, because I think people should be centered in their lives. But when we look for a center, we don't actually find a center. And so there's also a teaching that the center that we're looking for, it is actually the congealed, contracted form of our egoic self, or our selfing mechanism. It's like the knot is the center, but when we unwind that center, like the onion, we found there was nothing there. And so there's this sort of place of flawlessness where the ground gets taken outside, where we take away the foundation and we find the centerless experience, to live without a center. So on one side, to be centered and to encourage finding your center is very positive. I'm not saying it's not. But what if we found there was no center? Can we remain in that? And what is it like to be in spaciousness that is centerless? And can we rest into that? And what if the idea of the center was a kind of a bound up knot that needed not to be tightened, not to be reaffirmed, but to be unraveled? And so then where do we find our sanctuary? Where do we find our refuge? And where do we find our true rest? I want to talk a little bit about this word refuge. I was thinking today of what to talk about, and this took me in a good direction. Refuge comes up in many traditions, and it comes up in everyday life. Like right here in Guatemala, we are in the rainy season. So every afternoon we're having rains come through. And so when we go out, we take our rain jackets, perhaps an umbrella if we're going to be out in the afternoon, so that they can shelter us, so we can find shelter from the weather. We wear a hat or sunglasses to be sheltered from the sun. And from the turning of the world and everything that's going on, where do we find our peace? Because all of us in some way, shape or form are being affected by a lot of things right now, not just our personal lives or interpersonal dynamics, but the world at large, with the rise of technology and social media. We have so much at our fingertips, and we see so much that we can't unsee, and there's a lot of turmoil, and a lot of people I speak to are kind of confused and overwhelmed by the state of the world. They think there's a lot going on, and there's a lot of concerns, and there's a lot to be taken seriously, and there's a lot of this push and pull back and forth of how do we position ourselves in the turmoil of everything that's going on? How do we stay informed, not be ignorant, not just look away, not just run to the mountains? And so where do we find our refuge? Where do we find our peace when every time we pick up our phone, there's a lot going on? Every time we look out, every time we speak to somebody, they have a lot of concerns. They've got so much going on. There's a lot of overwhelm. There's a lot of stress. There's a lot of distress. A lot of, this agitated energy, this restlessness. Everywhere we look in humanity, if we want to look for agitation and restlessness in humanity, we don't need to look far. It's in us, it's in our families, it's everywhere. And the way that we are all connected today, sometimes for many of us doesn't seem to help the problem. It seems to exacerbate it. And so I think this is one reason that we are all here, is we're looking for refuge. We're looking for peace of mind. We're looking for something to turn to that is a safe harbor while there is storms outside. Something that gives us more clear vision, so that when we look out of the world, we don't have to contribute to the problem, but we can contribute to the solution, to more peacefulness, more quality, more presence, more joy, more compassion, more forgiveness. All of the tried and true, old-fashioned sentiments that have been with us for a long time. And so where do we find the refuge? There's a saying from the Bible, and Jesus said, the foxes of the land have their dens, and the birds of the sky have their nests, but the son of the human being has no place to rest their head. And the foxes have their dens, the birds of the sky have their nest, but a human being has no place to rest their head. And I always used to think about this line when I first heard it. Why don't we have a place to rest our head? Where do we rest our head? And if we do look at this saying, we look how much we build and keep building, and empires, and our technological advancement and our achieving mindset. It's going in one direction, and it's going fast, perhaps. But in nature, we rest our head on things we built upon nature. We never really rest our head in nature or in our actual nature. And so, we don't have to look far to say, where are we going? Where are we trying to get to? When will it ever be enough? And is peace possible for the human being, for the individual, for all of us in some way or another? Because things are spiraling and spinning. And part of our society, part of our upbringing, part of our own inner trajectory and direction, it's geared towards this. We're told to get to the top of the mountain, get to the top of the ladder, reach success, have all of the nice things. If you have all of these things, then you'll be happy. And so we're in some way reaching for success, but we never really stop to ask what success is and who determines it and why it was determined that way. How success is measured and who's measuring it, right? And so sometimes we take up these practices that we're doing here in order to get better, to become better. But better what? Better who? If we mirror ourselves to that and put ourselves in comparison to what the ideal looks like, or where it should be, or how it should be, it's always somewhere over there. And comparisons are a very hard thing to live up to. In our society, we're building robots. Huge super technology and artificial intelligence is doing all sorts of things. But in a way, I was thinking we've already kind of become robots. Many in some way. We look out, we know that. We're sort of automatons. We're on automatic pilot. And we have buttons that can push and triggers that are pulled. And one of my good friends, who's a very wonderful academic, neuroscientist, philosopher, he talks about in cognitive science, in CogSci, about the predictive processing of the brain, that the brain is one of the most intelligent supercomputers that we have. We don't fully know how to use it, but as intelligent as it is, it's also very stupid, because it will do the tasks that we want it to do. It will learn the things that we want to learn. And if we don't organize it in an adequate direction, it will just keep going in that direction that we tell it to. It doesn't always course correct. We have billions of years of evolution in our brain, and some cognitive scientists talk about the way that the brain has evolved from its old background of the limbic system it's geared towards survival, and it's geared towards procreation. It's geared towards protection, and they say it's geared towards that part of the brain, the four Fs, which is a joke in evolutionary psychology. They say the four Fs are feeding, fighting, flight, freeze, feeding, and sex, something like that. And there's this interesting thing when we consider how predictive the brain is, how intelligent, how easily it's programmed, that it's going in a direction, and humanity is going in a direction, but the direction of our own survival, of our own protection, of these kind of necessities. On one level, they are a necessity, but on another level, it's not really geared toward looking for truth. It's not really geared toward looking for awakening. In order to move down these kind of spiritual paths, we have to rearrange our view and learn to look at things differently, learn to see that what we look at is not what it seems to be. What appears is an appearance. It's not truth. And so in all of the spiritual traditions, wisdom traditions, religions of the world, there's a call to truth, to contemplate truth, seekers of truth. And in order to do that, we have to do what we did last week and consider what is true. And that's a lifelong inquiry. And if we zoom out on the world, we see that it's passing. It's arising, passing. Everything is impermanent. The nature of the world is the nature of change. And everything we love, everything we hold dear, we have to let go of. At some point, we'll all have to let go of. Everything is kind of moving towards a state of decay in some way. And so when we grasp the nature of impermanence, the way everything's changing, we say, where do I find my refuge in all of that? We could say the nature of the world is a constant state of surrender, but we're always trying to hold on. And so some of the masters say that the problem is the way that we always try to hold on, because life is a river and you can't really hold on. But in some ways, we're all going to have to surrender completely at some point. And what we're doing here is learning to do a little bit, so that when that time comes, we can have a little bit more peace, perhaps, for ourselves and for others. And that's the state of affairs in life. And so when we zoom out and we see that everything's changing, arising and decaying and dying and moving in this way, it's like, where do we find refuge in that river? Where's the still ground to stand upon when there's centerlessness, when there's a groundlessness? And then what is the achieving mindset in our life? Is winning really winning? Is getting the thing really success? Like, where are we putting the time and attention to measure that thing? And then what is our natural state? Is it climbing the top of the mountain? What is the natural state of the human being? Is it this running around endlessly, ruminating, worrying, being in a hurry? Like, truly, is that the state and quality of the human being, of the human heart, of the human mind? Is that why we are here? I wonder. There's an old saying that I like very much. I don't know where it comes from, but it just says, where is the peace in more is better? We've been taught that more is better. Sometimes it is. But where is the peace in more is better? And if underneath these things we get really serious with our inquiry and we say, actually, peace is a really big ideal. It's a really beautiful thing. That's what I want, even if it's just a tiny bit of it. More peace is a good thing. If that's the ideal, then where is the peace in more is better? We need to, in order to hold space for that, we need to shift our perspective a little bit. From over here to just here. It's not a big shift of perspective, really, just like we did in the beginning. Rest the edge of the mind. And you find that peace is, it's always been there, just a little bit back. Just a little bit more down. Because when we look to all those other things, we kind of reach for them. And in the reaching, we move away from peace. In the grasping, we move away from peace. And in the reaching and grasping, we're hoping to identify with it more, hoping to build our personality more, which is fine in some regards. But every time we move away from that, we move away from peace. So we have a reactivity when our identity is threatened, when we move over this way. We have a pride or arrogance or a more craving, more wanting when we move this way. And so it's just this little tilt on the pendulum. And if we slow that down, we find that peace is always there. That peace is the kind of, the essence of the ground. If you go straight to presence, then where's the problem? Like there's so much going on in the world right now, but if you just go right to presence, is there a problem there in that space? And so when the problem goes, when we go to presence, we see that it doesn't actually have to take up all of our time. We don't have to be so worried or so in a hurry. And presence is like rain on a rain jacket. It slides off. It doesn't stick. It doesn't get stuck. So our refuge, our shelter, we go to all sorts of places to find peace. Yeah, we go to nature to find peace. We have time alone to find peace. We go on vision quest. We go to the temple, to the teepee, to the inipi, the church. We go to mosque. We go to the top of the mountain. We go to food. We go to alcohol. We go to drugs. We go to substances. We go to abuse. We go to all of these old things, all sorts of things in all directions to try to find peace. To try to find something stable, to find something that is a ground or a center in all of it. We go there to find something that is stable, something that doesn't topple over. Yeah? Because what I want to say is that true refuge in yourself, true refuge is never something outside of yourself. Because everything outside of ourself that we look to lean on, it topples over. Do you notice that? And so if everything outside of us doesn't really hold us up when we lean on it, doesn't really ground us when we land on it, then we have to stop looking external to us and find that peace first where it lives. And if we find where it lives, then we can start to find it in other areas. But we don't find it in other areas until we find where it lives. That makes sense? I'm going to read a quote, another one by Jesus. I don't know, don't be offended. This one's from the Gospel of St. Thomas, which I had a big period with, which is a very interesting study. He says, if those who lead you say that the kingdom of heaven is in the sky, then the birds of the sky will precede you. If they say to you that it is in the sea, then the fish of the sea will precede you. Rather, I say to you, the kingdom is inside of you, and also is outside of you. When you come to know yourself, then you will be known. And you will realize that it is you who are the children of the living Father. But if you do not know yourself, you will dwell in poverty, and it is you who are that poverty. So when you come to know yourself, you will be known, and you will realize that you are a child of the living light, a child of presence. But if you don't know that, then you succumb to the poverty of believing whatever it else you want to believe that you are. But he says it's not up there, it's not down there, it starts in here. And if you don't find the kingdom in here, then you don't find it out there. Some of the teachings of some of the masters and the religions, we confuse it because we follow the teachings and we follow the teacher and we follow the thing external to us. But pretty much all of those teachers, all of those masters, they said, no, no, no. You have to turn around. Know thyself. You have to look where it's coming from. You have to know the source of yourself. If you know the source of yourself, you'll see that that source is in everything else. If you know the source of yourself, you will, you'll know the source of everything else. And so here our refuge is within. If we can't find it outside, it's within. And if we go within and we don't find a center, we find this uncontracted, spacious centerlessness, this groundlessness. That can kind of give us some vertigo, some dizziness sometimes when we are holding really tight to the thing that wants to hold tight. But if we've started to loosen that grip and we're able to lightly rest, lightly relax the mind and relax the body, and see that spaciousness is not so terrifying. It's only terrifying because to enter into it means that we have to leave a lot of things behind when we do it. And so it's scary to the personality, it's scary to the ego that wants to cling to the known, because to rest in that spaciousness is a kind of surrender to the unknown. And that's an interesting place to put ourselves. But as I said, it's something that is inherent in nature and inherent in life, and something that we're all going to have to do sooner or later anyway. Yeah. So befriending this spaciousness, befriending the void, befriending this emptiness, being able to rest closer towards it without recoiling, without denying, without resisting. It involves a certain degree of surrender. It involves a certain degree of willingness to see through the masks, to see the things that want to hold. It involves a certain trust as well, to let the mask fall, even momentarily. A lot of people, we could push back and say, but I need the mask to live in the world. I don't want to be a crazy person. I don't want to give everything away. And, we're talking about how to be in the world, but how to find peace. And sometimes we have to look underneath the mask. And if you haven't heard this, this is a really simple way of describing a thing. And that is that of the persona, the personality. So personality comes from the word persona. And persona in ancient, I think Latin and Greek play, acting on the stage, the persona, it was the mask that the actor would wear in order to perform the role. In other words, it was the character. So the persona, where we have personality, literally in its definition, we could say it is the mask in which we show to the world. But it's also just a mask. And so if we take it off very slowly, little bit by little bit, to see what's underneath it. It's scary to take it off because we don't know what's under there. We don't know if we're going to lose the mask and we won't be able to find it again. But if we slowly look under the cover and we say, okay, spaciousness. And we can confuse this spaciousness as being a void as well. And void can be positive or negative, maybe. But rather than saying it's a void, I'd say it's a devoid of certain things. It's devoid of distraction. Void is devoid of our restlessness. It's devoid of all of the things that come when we avoid the sense of spaciousness that could be called a void. And what is devoid of those things, if we are devoid of restlessness and agitation, of confusion, of distraction, if those things don't bother us anymore, then what is that quality? It's peace. So if we are devoid of certain things that bother us, if they don't bother us anymore, then we are nearing peace. And quite often in our life, we run away from peace. We distract ourselves from peace because we are concerned that it is a gaping void that will swallow us whole and we'll never find our way out. But it's a really relaxed thing. It's a gentle thing. It can be a softening thing. So I say soften the belly, soften the eyes, rest the edge of the mind. If we can rest in towards it, we find that it's been holding us all along. Yeah. I saw a meme the other day, and I really liked it. It said, I just bought my stupid $7 coffee to help me fill the void, and now I'm going to stare at my stupid $1,000 phone to help me fill the void, but the void is not full. Yeah. And so again, I think we spoke about this in the first class, the ways that we try to fill that space of emptiness, not realizing that the emptiness doesn't need to be filled, and that that space is actually our refuge. If we can turn towards it like a shelter, we find that it shelters us. If we can turn towards it like a ground, we find that it grounds us. We fill the space with flowers and furniture. We fill it with many things, right? But the space here in my room, in the room where I am, I ask, is it any different than the space of the room where you are? Maybe it smells different, I don't know. So the space of the room where you are, is that space different than the room next door? And is it different from the space outside of the walls? And so we fill it with furniture, we house it with walls, but when those walls come down, it is the same space. The space doesn't change. The space remains. The spaciousness remains. And in the same way, in our mind, we fill it with all sorts of furniture, all sorts of thoughts, all sorts of nice things. But the space inside, if you go to that space, you feel that space. Every cell, every fiber, every feeling, every emotion, every sensation, every thought, if you really look closely at it, you see at their heart is spaciousness. And if you take away, if you lift the veil on all those things, it's the same spaciousness that remains. So if you find this inherent spaciousness inside of you, then you find it in everybody else. It's one of those things. If you find that light inside of you, you see that light outside. If you find this spaciousness inside of you, you know that it's in others. You know that it's also the space between yourself and others. And that the furniture, the wall, the body is kind of a temporary fixture that when it falls away, the space doesn't change. Do you see that? I have a little contemplation that's been with me for many years. And when I share these things, it's just for you to sit with. If it works, let it work. You don't have to figure it out. But it says the awareness of space, the awareness of space is the space of awareness. And so here we let the awareness, your present awareness right now, you let it intermingle with space. You let the mind intermingle with this spaciousness. You let the body intermingle with this spaciousness. And it's already intermingling with this spaciousness all the time, but we don't realize it. So when we come to that level, we see, oh yeah, awareness is pervading like space. Space is pervading like awareness. And when I let those things intermingle, they settle. They don't seem so distant anymore from my body to my mind, from here to there. And it kind of closes some distance. And then if we wanted to get a little bit mystical, seeing that spaciousness, the intermingling of spaciousness and awareness, seeing that the spaciousness doesn't change when the walls fade, seeing the spaciousness in me and in you and in between me and you. Then we say, oh, if I take away the name spaciousness, what is it? If I give it another name, could it be true? Is that what they call divine radiance? Is that what they call the presence of God? Is that what they call the light of Christ? Is that what they call Shiva? Is that what they call holy peace? Whatever names you want to give to it. What is this presence, this awareness of space that pervades and doesn't have a name, but is in all things, at the heart of all things, everywhere? And the thing about this spaciousness is you can never avoid it. Because everywhere you go, you will be inside of it. And everywhere you go, it will be inside of you. So you're never outside of it. So it has an embracing quality, has an all-encompassing quality. And then when we recognize that if we take our name off, if we take our labels off, if we take our walls down, is there a difference between this spaciousness and what you are? Is there a difference between this quality of spaciousness and your present awareness? And that's the kind of key to a more natural meditation. It's rather than mental gymnastics or following procedures, it's resting in this inherent quality of spaciousness that is no different than your awareness. And you find it has a fragrant quality like peace. It's naturally settled, it's naturally still, it's naturally silent, and it naturally holds all things and doesn't leave anything out of it. It doesn't leave you out of it, doesn't leave any thought out of it. And so when a thought comes to take us away, we look at it with the lion's gaze and it comes back to the awareness. It dissolves back into space like a wave in the sea. And so it's not about my pretty words. It's about, do you feel that space? Do you feel that? Do you hear it? Do you see it? And then finding that it is what feels, it is what sees, and it is what hears. And so I would perhaps gesture that this is the place that he meant for us to find, where he said, the son of the human being, the child of the human person has no place to lay their head. The foxes have their dens, the birds have their sky. So where do we find our refuge if there's no place to lay our head? I propose that the place of resting our head is in this natural quality, this natural spaciousness. The place where we find our refuge is right there in that presence. And that's why he had to write a sort of a riddle for us to find it, because it's not external to us. So I came up with a little sequence. I don't know if it rings true just yet, but it feels true. It feels like a good direction to lean in. It says that refuge is return. So in order to find refuge, we have to return. Refuge is return, but in order to return, we have to remember. So return is remembrance. Refuge is return. Return is remembrance. And in order to remember, we have to recognize. Something has to come online. We have to be present. So to remember is to recognize. And when you recognize, the recognition, that is realization. To recognize is to realize. And realization is revealing, right? When you reveal something, it's like the light comes on. So to realize is to reveal. And then what is revealed is where you take your refuge. You come back to the start. So let's take a moment just to breathe in this. Invite you to look inside. to find the peace in your heart, to find the peace of your mind, to find that the nature of the mind is in fact a quality like peace, a quality like spaciousness. And when we return to that ground and that essence, we ask, where is the problem? And have I been getting swept up in the sea of waves, forgetting that I am the sea? And so taking refuge in presence, taking refuge in this moment here and now. That whatever comes, may it come. Whatever the world brings, whichever way it goes, whichever the way the wind blows, whichever way the storm shakes, whichever way the branch breaks, it doesn't disturb this refuge.